Your values are going to be tested tomorrow. How you value truth. Has everything you said about other people, or I've said about other people today, been accurate? 10% accurate? 60% accurate? Or do I not value truth? If you've got no sense of God covering your history, you'll wobble and fall. If you've got no sense of God being your supreme value, you're going to be wiped away. You can't live without absolutes. And if you take the true absolute of God and relativize it, in the end, you'll take something else and make an absolute out of it. You have to decide where your values come from.
All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. In this clip, John Lennox discusses the book of Daniel, emphasizing its relevance to young people in the 21st century. Won't take away from the video. Let's jump right into it. I got some scriptures at the back end. You don't want to miss it. Let's go.
What does this represent? And here's what it represents. Those vessels made of gold and silver from the temple of God represented absolute value. They were symbols of the glory of God. And to Daniel, they represented absolute value. Nebuchadnezzar made them of relative value. Do you recognize that in your culture? You see, Daniel's explaining to us the big issues. And he's saying, what I noticed in my life was that powerful people and not so powerful people take things of absolute value and they make them of relative value. You like Jesus? Well, that's very nice. I like crystals myself. I find them more helpful. You see, that's making Jesus of relative value. And our culture is full of it. Because the influence of relativism from the ancient world has been to do exactly this, so people come to the foolish conclusion that there is no absolute truth.
Man, he just nailed it. That's absolutely correct. This culture is full of it, full of relativism. And it influences people to believe that there's no truth. There's no absolute truth. There's no absolute value or absolute morality. But I want to give you a scripture where Jesus says this in John 14:6. I am the way and the truth, the absolute truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father except through me.
That there is no absolute value. That there is no absolute morality. That's very logically silly. Do you like logic? You think of the statement, there is no absolute truth. The person that says it expects you to take it as an absolute truth. So if there's no absolute truth, there's one absolute truth, and that is a contradiction in terms. Everybody believes that there's absolute truth, folks. Only usually not in areas that they think are unimportant. They'll believe in absolute truth about how much they have in the bank, but not about their morality. Now, what is this raising? It's raising the hugely important contemporary question of the relationship between the absolute and the relative. Is that vital to you? Of course it is. Because you have to decide where your values come from.
Check this out. Colossians chapter 3, verses 1-2 says, if then you have been raised with Christ, seek the things that are above, where Christ is, seated at the right hand of God. Set your minds on things that are above and not on things that are on earth. That's powerful, man. Because when we do that, it recalibrates our morality, our truth, our values, and it sets it correct. It puts all of everything back into perspective on what life is really about.
I can imagine Daniel and his friends going down sometimes to the museum in Babylon quietly and going to the window where these lovely vessels were. And Daniel saying, guys, that's what we stand for. There's a Christian version of it. Maybe you've prayed it. Father, hallowed be your name. Your name be separate, be my supreme value. The basic Christian confession is what? Jesus Christ is Lord. He's my Lord. He's my supreme value. Your values are going to be tested tomorrow. How you value truth. Has everything you said about other people, or I've said about other people today, been accurate? 10% accurate? 60% accurate? Or do I not value truth? And so it goes on. This is a huge challenge, but it's showing the secret of standing. If you've got no sense of God covering your history, you'll wobble and fall. If you've got no sense of God being your supreme value, the same thing is going to happen. You're going to be wiped away in a society that is desperate to take what's most precious from you and destroy your value system. Now, this is the start of an analysis of the nature of values. Because you see, in that first chapter, we've read what happens. In the second, Nebuchadnezzar dreams of an image full of metals, gold, silver, bronze, iron. It's all about the values, but this time, the value of a political system. That's an interesting question. And then in chapter 3, he makes a golden image. And the three friends are ordered to bow down to the image. Now watch what's happening. In chapter 1, Nebuchadnezzar relativizes the absolute. In chapter 3, he absolutizes the relative. That's what happens. You see, you can't live without absolutes. And if you take the true absolute of God and relativize him, in the end, you'll take something else and make an absolute out of it. Either it'll be money, sex, or power. And here it's the state. And so Nebuchadnezzar builds this huge golden, very valuable statue and says to men, you bow down to that. How would you have faced that? How would I have faced that? We read this as a lovely little story for kids, the fiery furnace, and God delivered them in the fiery furnace and they never suffered. Listen, that's a fairy story. They suffered terribly, not in the furnace, but before they got to it.
All right, so we can sum it up with this. If we make God our supreme value, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to read you Romans chapter 8, verses 28. And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God and to them who are the called according to his purpose. What does that mean? If you value God, then you love God. You look at what God thinks more than what people think about you. You trust him more than you trust man. You acknowledge him in all of your ways. And when you do that, it recalibrates everything, like I said. It puts everything back into perspective and it makes you see from a different lens. And guess what? As a byproduct of doing that, God works everything out for the good in your life. That's powerful, man. So guys, God bless you. I hope this was encouraging. If you like this video, do me a huge favor, solid favor. Subscribe, share, hit the notification bell as it helps the YouTube's algorithm, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care, and God bless.